Hello everybody, how's it going? Apologies for the delay in getting this video out. It has been several weeks at this point, but I still wanted to finish out this two-part series. This time I'm just going to do the good and the bad for each Western Conference team going into the next season. Not going to do the good, bad, and ugly because the bad and the ugly were just kind of repetitive. Like the last video, we're going to go in standings order, so we're going to be starting off with the Oklahoma City Thunder. I could really make an entire video about the good here. They were the second youngest team in the entire NBA last season, and all the other youngest teams were terrible, like the Spurs, the Hornets, and the Trailblazers. They not only made the playoffs, but got the first seed in an ultra-competitive Western Conference, won a playoff series, and pushed the team that represented the finals in the West, the Dallas Mavericks, to a really competitive 6 games. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander took a leap to be a top 3 MVP candidate. Chet Holmgren finished second in Rookie of the Year voting, and would have won Rookie of the Year in most seasons if there wasn't a 7'4" French phenom in his class, and they have a big 3 for the future when you add Jalen Williams to that. On top of that, they signed Isaiah Hartenstein to a long-term deal, locked up Aaron Wiggins and Isaiah Joe on extremely cheap long-term deals, and there isn't a single person on this team that should even sniff regression for the next several seasons. They did all of this while owning all of their first-round picks and plenty of extras from other teams. Like, how would you even say anything bad about this team? They already addressed the only possibly negative thing, which was Josh Giddey. They realized they didn't want to pay him when he hit restricted free agency, so they shipped him off to the Bulls and got another elite guard/wing defender in Alex Caruso without giving up a single first-round pick. The Oklahoma City Thunder are really set up for the future big time. The second seed in the Western Conference last season was the Denver Nuggets. The good for the Denver Nuggets is that they still have 3-time MVP Nikola Jokic. Having guys like Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon isn't too shabby either. Obviously, their core is still good enough to compete for a championship for the next couple of seasons. The bad, though, is the salary cap and the second apron rules in the new CBA really starting to take its toll on them. The Nuggets lost a key role player in Bruce Brown after their 2023 championship run, and lost a starter this offseason in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. On top of that, they're going to be even thinner next year with Deron Holmes, the 22nd pick in the 2024 draft, tearing his Achilles in Summer League. Obviously, he wasn't going to be a starter or anything, but I assume he would have played a rotational role this season, so that's just another depth piece that they're losing out on. At number 3, we have the Minnesota Timberwolves. The good? They made the Western Conference Finals. I mean, that's not an easy thing to do. They beat the Phoenix Suns in a dominant 4-game sweep, and then barely squeaked by the mighty defending champion Denver Nuggets in 7 games. At least for right now, this wipes away those biggest overpay and terrible trade sentiments about Rudy Gobert, at least for a little bit, even though Gobert was still getting cooked by Jokic for significant parts of that series. But the Timberwolves built themselves to frustrate everyone else on the Nuggets, especially Jamal Murray, and that worked like a charm. That and Anthony Edwards showed himself to be a real playoff performer. The bad is that their bench is really weak looking into next season. They're going to be relying on guys like Rob Dillingham, Terrence Shannon Jr., Joe Ingles, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, maybe even Luka Garza for minutes. The pickup of Ron Dillingham was a great one, as they're going to need a lead guard when Conley retires in the next few years, but their best title window is now. And surrounding Conley, Ant, McDaniels, Cat, and Gobert, they don't have a ton of depth, mainly due to how expensive their roster is. At 4, we have the Dallas Mavericks, and the good is super obvious. The Dallas Mavericks made their first NBA Finals in the Luka Doncic era after beating the Clippers, Thunder, and Timberwolves in the playoffs. Luka Doncic has a legitimate case to be the best player in the NBA going into next season, and they had a good offseason too. They signed 4-time champion and little splash bro Klay Thompson to the team, and added other wing pieces in Quentin Grimes and Najee Marshall. Adding these pieces in place of Josh Green, Derrick Jones Jr., and Tim Hardaway Jr. is a significant upgrade. The bad, I guess, is that the Mavericks are really hoping Klay Thompson can be the third option on this potential championship squad. Him and Kyrie are not getting any younger, and if they start to regress, the Mavericks might need to get carried by Luka again. The 5th seed was the Los Angeles Clippers, and there is not a lot of good here, so I'm actually going to start with the bad. They lost Paul George in free agency, and according to Paul George, it's pretty much all the Clippers' fault. I could go into the whole timeline of things, but I assume y'all have seen videos about that, or you could have heard it straight from the source on PG's podcast. It came down to Paul George wanted either a no-trade clause, which I agree to them not giving out because that has not worked out well for the Washington Wizards or the Phoenix Suns with Bradley Beal, or a fourth year on his contract. And why the hell would you not offer that fourth year? You were already going to pay him, you were fine paying him a 3-year max, but a 4th year max, that apparently is something you can't do? You already have no draft picks. You're still locked into attempting to compete with Kawhi and Harden anyway. Why would you not at least give yourself a chance at the ceiling of having Kawhi, PG, and Harden healthy and maybe making some miracle run to the finals, especially when your owner is one of the richest owners in the NBA? It truly makes no sense. So looping back to the good, I don't know, Derrick Jones Jr. was a fine signing, I guess. Kawhi Leonard withdrew from Team USA, which means he can't hurt himself anymore this summer. They, in theory, could have some cap space next offseason too. It's really grasping at straws. The Clippers are in a bad spot. At number 6, we got the Phoenix Suns, and kind of a cop-out answer once again, but the best thing about the Phoenix Suns going into next season is they still have KD and Devin Booker. There was a moment in this offseason where it looked like KD might go to the Rockets, but the Suns are largely going to run it back after not winning a single playoff game last season. And that loops into the bad for this team. This team had a lot of talent, but it didn't work out last season, and they barely changed anything up. The only additions they really made are big body David Roddy and the rookie Ryan Dunn. And honestly, those are solid pickups, especially Ryan Dunn, but they're not going to be difference makers. I don't really see a world where this team is better than the Nuggets, Mavericks, Timberwolves, and Thunder next year. At number 7, you got the Los Angeles Lakers, and the good is obvious. You got the best player in the draft at pick 55. Let's go, Bronny. No, the best thing about this offseason for them actually did come via the draft, though, and that was the 17th pick, Dalton Knecht, falling to them. Knecht 4 did struggle in his first few Summer League games, but he is a tall shot creator that could make an immediate impact with the Lakers. The bad news is, though, that this might be LeBron's last year in the NBA. Best case scenario, he maybe has 2 left, but even at 40 years old, he's crucial to this team's success. I don't know how aggressive the Lakers front office is going to be adding pieces because LeBron is not going to play much longer, but when he does retire, this isn't a championship aspiring team anymore. That is if they really realistically are one now. At number 8 is the New Orleans Pelicans. The good, I would say, is they made one of the surprise moves of the offseason, trading for DeJounte Murray. There was some speculation about a DeJounte for Brandon Ingram swap, but they got him for just Larry Nance, Dyson Daniels, and some draft capital. DeJounte Murray can eventually replace CJ McCollum, but also acts as a decent complement to CJ for the time being. It's still unknown as of me writing this if BI will start the season as a Pelican, but with him or not, this team is looking pretty damn good if everyone can stay healthy. The only downside, who is playing center for this team? They traded away Larry Nance Jr., and they lost Jonas Valanciunas in free agency. Plus, it's not like there's copious starting centers in free agency right now. In fact, there's barely any backup level centers left. It's a real possibility they start off next season with a center rotation of Daniel Tice and rookie Yves Missy, with Zion maybe playing some spot minutes there too. Size is really going to be a problem for them, as Yves Missy is their only player above 6'9" on the roster right now. Moving on to the teams that missed the playoffs in the Western Conference last season, at number 9 you got the Sacramento Kings. The good for the Sacramento Kings is that they acquired DeMar DeRozan, a legit third option for this Sacramento Kings team, and all they really had to give up was Harrison Barnes. They also added Devin Carter in place of Davion Mitchell, and although Carter may not be ready for the start of the season, in theory he should already be better than Davion Mitchell ever was. On top of that, they also maintained Malik Monk on a 4-year contract, which was not a given at the beginning of this offseason. The bad, however, is their defense. Last season they already were an amazing offensive team, and a really bad defensive team, and now they've replaced Harrison Barnes with DeMar DeRozan. Their starting lineup, I assume, will be De'Aaron Fox, Kevin Huerter, DeMar DeRozan, Keegan Murray, and Domantas Sabonis, and that is not good on defense. The bench has Keon Ellis and Jalen McDaniels, but this should be a bottom defensive team once again, which really limits their ceiling. At number 10, you got the Golden State Warriors. Just because it's so obvious, I'm going to start with the bad once again. Klay Thompson shot over 10 in an elimination game. No, the bad is actually the fact that they lost Klay Thompson. After 13 years in the NBA and 4 championships, Klay Thompson is now a Dallas Maverick. He definitely has not been the same player since those knee injuries, despite still being a great shooter, but if anything, it really signifies the end of an era in Golden State, possibly one of the last true dynasties in the NBA. But it's not all bad in Golden State. Despite losing Klay, I actually think they did a good job of filling in the roster. They signed Buddy Hield and DeAnthony Melton to replace Klay by committee, and also signed Kyle Anderson as a serviceable wing. I'm not sure if it's going to be Jonathan Kuminga or Lauri Markkanen on the team come opening day, but they still have a competitive lineup, even in an ultra-competitive Western Conference. For the Houston Rockets, the good is that Reed Sheppard looks amazing. I mean, he's not only showing that his three-point stroke extends to the NBA level, but also that he's a willing, albeit undersized defender, and capable of running the offense as a true point guard. I was worried that he might fall into that weird off-guard middle ground because of his height, and obviously this is only Summer League, but this is a great thing for the Rockets. The Rockets have like a 10 to 11 man rotation honestly for next season that I'm really excited to watch. And the bad, maybe it's not as bad for the Rockets as it is for Jalen Green, but I do have doubts about how Jalen Green and Reed Sheppard would fit together. It is being a little presumptuous that I'm already saying that Reed Sheppard's going to overtake Jalen Green and he's going to be this good early on, but if he eventually does become a really good player, I think the Rockets would have to move on off of one of Jalen Green or Reed Sheppard, and it would probably be Jalen Green. For the Utah Jazz, the best thing for them was the NBA draft. They drafted Cody Williams at 10, Isaiah Collier at 29, and Kyle Filipowski at 32. Cody Williams isn't just going to come in and be as good as his brother J-Dub, but he does have a similar frame and set of skills. Isaiah Collier is a really high-volume, crafty scorer who I wanted my New York Knicks to pick up. And Kyle Filipowski is a near 7-footer who can score inside and even extend his range to 3 a little bit. And hey, he's used to playing with older people. Look at his fiance. The bad thing technically hasn't happened yet, but it seems everything is pointing in this direction. Are the Jazz really going to trade Lauri Markkanen? This is an all-star level guy who's still in his 20s, but the Jazz seem ready to trade him away because they don't want to give him his next big payday? Personally, I don't think it's a good idea to trade Lauri, but I guess let's see what they do. Now, the 13th seeded Memphis Grizzlies. The good news is it can't get any worse, right? This team still has talent. I mean, they were a 51-win team and a 2nd seed just 2 years ago, and they have pretty much the same team. However, as I mentioned, the West has just gotten so much better, and last year they were riddled with injuries, the jaw suspension, so they only won 27 games. And the bad, it's going to be a bit of a hot take, I guess, but is adding Zach Edey really turning this into a playoff lock of a team? Yeah, they're going to be getting Ja, Smart, Brandon Clark, and more pieces back, but honestly, where do they fall in the Western Conference? I think those top 4 teams from last season are all better than them, and they're going to be competing with the Suns, Kings, Lakers, and Pelicans just to avoid the play-in tournament. The good news for the Spurs is that they're starting to build a contending team. They drafted Stephon Castle at pick 4, picked up Harrison Barnes, signed Chris Paul, and also acquired some extra draft capital from the Rob Dillingham trade. I'm not sure what the starting lineup's going to look like, or even what this team will look like on opening night, but they will undoubtedly be more competitive than last season, being led by Victor Wembanyama. And for the bad, I mean, I didn't love the trading away of the Rob Dillingham pick, but they did acquire some potentially decent draft picks down the line, so I'm not going to go ahead and call that a terrible move. But the 2024 season went about as expected, right? Wemby was as good, if not better than advertised, and they had a good offseason. So yeah, not too much bad. And finally, for the 15th seeded Portland Trailblazers, we're once again going to start with the bad. This is going to be a long rebuild. They have made some good decisions, which I'll go over in a second, but this team is still at least 2 to 3 years away from a playoff berth in this Western Conference. Additionally, I don't think there's anyone on this team that's a real number 1, or maybe even a number 2 option. I'm not a big Anthony Simons guy. Maybe Shaedon Sharpe can get there, but I'm not sure. For the good, I like taking the chance on Denny Avila from the Wizards. I think Donovan Clingan was the right draft pick with how the board was shaking up, and you still have those young guards you can continue to develop. This team has plenty of tradable pieces too for being sellers at the deadline. You don't need all three of DeAndre Ayton, Donovan Clingan, and Robert Williams, and I also don't think you need all three of Anthony Simons, Scoot Henderson, and Shaedon Sharpe. The Blazers front office may have to make some hard long-term roster moves this season. And that's it. That's the good and the bad for every Western Conference team from last season going into this season. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree with anything I said for your favorite team, or I don't know, some team that you just are preying on their downfall of. This is the Sports Ball Network, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.